This video is about degrees of belief. So what's the difference between a degree of belief and a degree of truth? Well, evidence is what distinguishes a degree of truth from a degree of belief. In this table here, we can outline the basic differences between a degree of truth and a degree of belief. And we'll use weather as an example. You'll notice in the title, belief is a perception of truth, and outcomes are the realization of beliefs. So what we're really trying to do is make a connection between what we believe and then what eventually happens. So beliefs are more like feelings, and truths are more like evidence. So because beliefs are like feelings, they're measured on an intensity level. And we have a range from -3 to from +3 to -3. And the middle is 0. And that means basically uncertainty. Like in the case of weather, it would be a 50% chance of rain. We simply just don't know whether it would be a little more sunny or a little bit more cloudy. So we have this scale and we associate it with intensity, words that describe intensity. In this case, it's from highest to lowest, but it could be best to worst. It could be coldest to hottest. It could be from prettiest to ugliest. Whatever you want to substitute, you can. And you can substitute any symbols for this +3 to -3 scale. When we talk about degree of truth, we're talking about absolute or pure truth, or absolute or pure fallacy, and then some shade of gray in between. For degree of belief, what we're really saying is something between conviction and disbelief. And in between there could be trust or doubt. But basically, we're trying to limit the extent of feelings. Because feelings can just have a tendency to keep on expanding. And unless we have a range, we won't really be able to make much use of our feelings. When we put it on a numeric scale, we can achieve a lot with it. So that's the basic outline. I want to keep this very short, so I don't want to get into a lot of detail. I'll elaborate more in another video. But for anyone who has a background in statistics, this might make a little bit of sense to you, because these would be, you could relate these to standard deviations, or if statistics is unfamiliar to you, you might consider it a point of diminishing returns. And to relate that to feelings, there's a big difference between hate and rage. So let's say you hate somebody. You might want to set that as the -3, the -3, or the lowest level of intensity, because that's a point beyond which you really just start using up a lot of energy and you don't get anything back in return. So emotionally or psychologically, you hit the point of diminishing returns. And this is really has a math basis. You don't need to know anything about math, because we're going to be dealing mostly with symbols here. But that's the rationale. So I don't want to go any deeper into it. And we'll use a weather example to explain it in more detail. So here's our weather example. And basically what we're trying to determine is, for a given forecast, should we wear sunglasses, or bring sunglasses along, or take an umbrella along? So let's take a look here at the current weather conditions. You can see this road right here. If we were driving down the middle, we don't know what'll happen when we get to the end of the road. Will we hit these threatening clouds here and get rain? Or will the weather be more like the clearing skies on the right half of this picture? So it's really uncertain. And when there's a lot of uncertainty, people get uncomfortable. And the problem with being uncomfortable is that people get anxious. They really want a definite answer. And so most people won't want to deal with uncertainty. They'll want to move the dial to one side or the other. And that's where people jump to conclusions. And what we're trying to avoid here is jumping to conclusions. So let's take a look at a degree of belief. Here's our forecast. And let's say, we just got back from viewing the weather forecast from the National Weather Service, and it really doesn't help us. Let's say that, after reading it, we're still uncertain. It can't tell us one way or another. So what we do is we say, well, is there any error in this forecast? And let's say we think that the forecast isn't very accurate. And what we do is we select one of these buttons that indicates how we feel about it. In this case, we feel that there's likely an error. And what this will do is change our degree of belief. So if we come to one extreme, you can see how these blue buttons change. And if we think that there's no error in the forecast, well, then maybe there's a reason to trust or have a sense of conviction about the forecast. If we think it's very likely that the forecast is bad, then we have reason to doubt. So these first two buttons, the forecast and the forecast error, they basically have to do with our feelings. Now, what we want to do is balance our feelings with our thoughts, and we can use evidence to do that. Now, this is on a scale from -3 to +3, and most of the time we start at 0 because we don't know one way or the other. As we gain information, we can change these ratings. We can move them up or down. And just to refresh you for a second here, let's just go back. Whoops. Let's go back to this picture again to show you what the current weather is like. On the left half is threatening clouds, and the right half is kind of clearing clouds. So we really don't know what's going to happen when we get to the end of the road. And what we need is some evidence. And the picture was the evidence. So if you think that it's clearing, you'd select the partly true. If you think that that threatening clouds are going to be the case in the next 5 or 10 minutes, then you would tend to you'd have your degree of belief would be disbelief. So now that you know how these basic little how this basic arithmetic operates, you have the initial forecast, you subtract out the error, and then you add in the evidence, and then that gives you your degree of belief. So that's the algorithm, the little arithmetic equation. So just having an algorithm doesn't help you. You have to say, what is this relative to? Is it relative to cloudy conditions right now, or sunny conditions, or rainy conditions? You'll see that for rainy, if the forecast right now is uncertain and doesn't help us that much, but we look outside and we see it's raining, we're going to be skeptical of the forecast. But if we look outside and it's actually sunny, we're going to actually trust the forecast. And if it's cloudy, let's reset that to what it was before. If it's cloudy, well, we may not know. And we may just say it's uncertain. And the advantage of using evidence is that we get this magnifying glass symbol, which means look for more information. And if we can't prove something, we don't want to jump to a conclusion. So that's why the evaluation could be unproven. And we want to be sure that we're not relying on our intuition. So, and let's just reset this to where it was before. So that's the degree of belief algorithm. And it's really useful if you want to tell if someone's lying to you, And in the bigger picture of things, this becomes part of a psychological model. And we can use it, for example, to fact check someone's story. And we can see how things are related, how feelings and needs and beliefs all fit together to come to some outcome or some conclusion. How you build a mental processing model is explained in the next video. For right now, all we really wanted to do is just show how you can calculate the degree of belief and how that differs from degree of truth.